Should I start now? Do you like my intro?
It's a bit dramatic.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Hinterland's One-Shot episode 16. Today we're going to talk about something interesting. What do you want to talk about? We have a topic. But before we get to the topic, do you have anything you'd like to say? How about a news bit?
I wanted to talk like an anime character, but you won't let me.
It's because it sounds ridiculous. And you don't even watch anime, so how could you possibly
No, it's the most
know?
irritating thing in the world to me.
Anime is amazing. You have to be choosy with your anime and choose the right one. Then you know what good anime is.
I'm not an emo 17-year-old boy, so...
Neither am I, but there are good animes out there.
Mm-hmm. That is not what I wanted to talk about.
Today we're talking about anime, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
That's not true. We're not. We're talking about truth. Biblical truth. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Although there are many people who would disagree with what I just said. We're talking about the age of the earth today.
Well, from the video I just watched, they posit that there is no scientific measurement. There's no accurate scientific measurement of how old the Earth is, because everything they use to measure it is an assumption they've made, based off another assumption they've made, because you cannot go back far enough with the observation to know, if some number was there in the beginning, or if there was nothing there.
Ah, yes, it's the whole... We presuppose. It's presuppositional apologetics, is what it is. And that's quite a mouthful, and I practiced it so I could say it well. That's not true. But it really is the smartest way to pick apart someone's arguments, is to go back to the core reason why they believe what they're saying. And if they presuppose things, and what they presuppose is not sound or truthful, then the whole argument can be refuted quite easily. That's why presuppositional apologetics works so well.
Well, trying to pick out books for the kids and researching random things really does highlight for me how choosy we're going to have to be when we pick out school books eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Because even the science books I had growing up, they were written by a creationist. But even he taught some things based on the assumptions of mainstream.
The old Earth model.
I think so. I don't remember.
Was it evolution? There's a lot of Christians who think evolution is...
No, I don't think he was an evolutionist. But the school company we were with wouldn't even buy the books because they were written by a creationist. Really? Yeah.
I thought you... Oh, you didn't do...
I didn't do Raven.
Well, Raven is a Christian organization?
I'm not certain that it is. I know they're friendlier to it.
Either way, you didn't do a Christian organization in school?
I did. I did one that, No.
No is the answer.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, I have, I've done a bit of reading, and it seems to me that there's not enough evidence that is provable that says the Earth is super, super old and the universe is super, super old. Surely there's a lot of things that people say, hey, look at this evidence. Here's the thing that says the Earth is really, really old. But that's a presupposition. You're assuming that it's old already before you even look for this evidence. So when you find a thing that seems to be evidence towards your theory, then you assume that as truth, which is an incorrect way of doing things. If you found a whole bunch of evidence to the contrary of that says the Earth is young, you probably wouldn't change, you being the hypothetical you probably wouldn't change your mind because your presuppositions outweigh the evidence that is against your presupposition.
Well, the video I was watching, because I did no research on this topic, because I didn't want to spend hours sifting through Google to get past mainstream sources. The video I was watching was talking about how when they run the numbers, they have to use several different tools for measurement, and they don't match up, so they have to adjust one in order to make them match.
And the match is always for the older one, if they're doing the million years for the date of the Earth, or billions rather. They always side on the one that is the oldest.
Well, he used an example of one place they measured, and I don't remember where it was exactly, but one was millions of years old, the other one was more millions of years old, and then one was negative 97 million years. As in still forming.
I was going to say, 97 million years in the future?
Yes.
Wow. Weird.
Yeah.
So, I have here written down for the audience, I have written 10 points. I was going to do 3, but I ended up with 10.
Are you sure we actually have enough for a whole episode on this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. We're already 6 minutes in. We're going to get there.
Okay.
This might be a 15-minute episode, but...
If
it's more than 15 minutes, it's a good episode. People will just have to listen to something else on their hour-long commutes instead of us the whole time. If there's anyone out there who actually commutes and listens to us.
Apparently people in Germany are listening to us.
Once in a while, yeah. We've had people listen in India. We've had people listen in Germany. I think we had someone hit from Sweden at one point. But mostly the States. Surprisingly, I don't know if anyone from Canada listens to us. Isn't that weird?
Well, you're all liberal in Canada, right?
Oh, they're not all liberal. I'm sure there's some mountain manish, live off the land sort of dude in a cabin somewhere that is a conservative-minded man in Canada, right? He's probably got like 40 rifles hanging on his walls. He goes out hunting every day. And...
Maybe. Canada just looks like an absolute mess right now. We keep seeing videos on Jessica Yaniv or Jonathan.
No, yeah, that person is
the fatso in the dress.
Giant steaming pile of human garbage. Just a terrible human being.
The reason I will never let our children use a public restroom.
You're gonna have to.
Well, they're gonna have to use the single-person family restroom.
There you go. They do exist. We should make one of those little maps of our town that tells where all the good bathrooms are.
You know, I'm pretty sure it was Meme the Left's post. I made a comment about how that right there is the reason I will drive an extra 30 minutes to go pee in the woods.
Oh yeah, the woods is a great bathroom. Might be the odd bear or wolf, but that can be dealt with at the time. That's what firearms are for. Scare bears away. Okay. Point number 1. We're moving on to my points.
Okay.
Point number 1. Dinosaur soft tissue.
But don't you know, they grind that up and they dissolve it in a solution. And then they do blah 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 with it.
Yes. So this was soundly debunked by some person we watched or another that we watched a video for. He said, "Oh well, no, this isn't true. They didn't actually find soft tissue for dinosaurs. There was this one lady, this one time, 20 years ago, who wrote a paper that got peer reviewed, and in that paper she claimed that they took dinosaur bones and ground them to a fine powder." And then soak them in such and such a solution for 2 months. And after all that work, they could get microscopic amounts of tissue that had softened up.
He didn't talk at all about this other guy. Did you write down his name by any chance?
I did not.
Wonder if we can find it really easily.
Probably. Keep talking, and unless you want to look it up.
I'll look it up. You keep talking.
Okay. I'll talk about the guy. So this other guy ended up, he was a really renowned microscopologist.
One of those words.
Microscopy guy. He worked with microscopes.
Right.
Very, very good at it. He had a master's degree.
Well, he was teaching
scientific guy.
other
Yeah,
people
he
to do
was
it.
teaching other people how to do it, and he's running this multi-million-dollar lab. Blah blah blah. He had an interest in anthropology. He went on this dig, and they found a triceratops horn.
Yes.
Which was buried like end up, like broken end up, and so highly, highly unlikely to contain anything really useful except for it itself, because it was all stone, right? That's the assumption, completely stone. So he started like looking through it with his own microscopes, and he ended up finding this crazy stretchy tissue in it. And he published a paper, and everyone was like congratulating him, and he got all these accolades. And like there was a student in there that had like witnessed it, and shortly thereafter the dude just came under fire from the university system.
Well, no, the student went and talked to somebody else. And
that was
minutes
like a professor,
later,
right? Yeah, minutes later,
this militant atheist.
Yeah, this guy came in and told him he was doing evil things, and you'll see in our history, I listened to some very cool music. Maybe I'll post that in the notes.
To see how far back in the history I can go quickly.
We watch a lot of YouTube.
Well,
yeah. So he came under fire, and he has been. Recently, he's actually won a lawsuit against the university for firing him on the grounds of this fallacious discovery he's published of dinosaur soft tissue. But it's not just him; it's multiple reports of dinosaur soft tissue, and you can actually watch videos of people taking this tissue from fossilized dinosaur bones.
Mark Armitage.
Mark Armitage. Yeah, that's his name. Look that guy up. And you can see these videos of people using tweezers to grab like either end of this soft tissue and like stretch it and move it around. It hasn't been ground to powder and then soaked in a solution for 6 months. It's probably treated in some way to make it more pliable, but it's like straight up stretchy tissues. They've found blood tissue, like actual blood cells, red blood cells of dinosaurs inside their bones.
Well, did you mention the fact that the Triceratops horn they found was found in the worst conditions?
Yeah, I alluded to it. It was found point down, and it was just a broken off chunk. And he mentioned in an interview we watched with him that if you're going to look for preserved tissue in anything, you try and find a femur bone because they're really long. They're basically big tubes that get sealed on either end. Mm-hmm. And you look in the very center of that sucker to find a preserved bit of tissue. And the one that they found was just like a run-of-the-mill find of Triceratops horn. It was exposed to air forever, and it was buried point down, so the part that should have been preserved by being stuck in silt or whatever was exposed to the air. It shouldn't have had anything in it, but they still managed to find soft tissue in it, and that's the one that he wrote his paper on. This guy's a huge proponent for dinosaur soft tissue now, and he's a Christian man. He goes around and at the end of the one video that we watched, he straight up had a gospel message. Was like, I don't fight this battle for me, and I never did. It was never about me. It's about making sure people know that the Bible's true, and Jesus is real, and God is real. He's pretty sweet. It's pretty cool that he does that.
Well, so I stopped listening for a period when I was looking at the TV, but the militant atheist who came after him when he found the soft tissue, apparently he got really freaked out, and during the lawsuit, some emails came out that the guy was freaked out because when he confronted Mark Armitage about what he'd found and said, "You're doing damage, you shouldn't do this, you need to stop," the guy said, "You are
you're violating my civil rights."
Yeah, and the guy got freaked out.
Yeah, that was like his first response. He's like, "I think you're violating my personal rights." And the guy was like, "Oh no." I didn't expect him to say something like that.
Yeah. Because
it's basically a direct attack against his religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's the whole reason the guy was coming after him, was because he knew he was a Christian.
So it's interesting that the scientific method is the gold standard until it disproves what's been decided. is true.
Yeah, it's like controlled lab conditions and accurate measurements and on and on and on, and they're discovering soft tissue in dinosaur bones, which over the course of millions and millions of years old is an impossibility. So tissues don't last that long. They just don't. They could last thousands of years in certain conditions, and so that's what I believe, that the Earth isn't millions of years old. I don't think it's any older than 10,000 years old. I can't cite anything directly that says, hey, 10,000 is it, but that's what everyone else seems to think. People who look into this a lot deeper than I do, that's what the number they always put out is, 10,000 or younger. They don't say over 10,000 ever, and they all have looked at the evidences. So anyway, that's number one.
Well, you've heard the research about how they can pinpoint the origin of the universe and how it's expanding.
Yes.
And I know we've looked into that before, and I can't remember exactly where we heard that, but that would be something to find a reference for again, because I recall that also pointed to the young Earth.
Oh, yeah, the expansion of the universe?
Yeah. Well, what's funny is we're looking at our watch history here. The video of the guy who debunked it, sadly his channel's called Conservative News, but the video of Mark Armitage, I'm not sure exactly how long ago that was. The one that we first watched was only 2 years old, but later we found one that was 4 years old that predated the video from the guy debunking it, and he never mentioned this guy. He talked about some woman who did in fact say that they ground up the bones and his ultimate solution.
He just had one case. There's been many different cases of people finding these things from different sources.
He didn't talk about this one.
Of course not. It didn't fit his presupposition.
Yeah.
He doesn't like the idea of dinosaur soft tissue, and therefore he found a thing to debunk it. One thing. Mm. But if he had looked at all the evidence of people finding it here and there and reporting on it, then he may have changed his tune. But clearly he just took one thing and ran with it. I don't even know what the point in him putting that video out is. It has nothing to do with conservative news. You know what I mean? This is
people, apparently he had a chip on his shoulder about young Earth creationists.
Yeah, probably because somebody had a really good argument he couldn't go against, so he made this little video to try and refute him. Okay, moving on. Number 2, the salinity of the ocean. And I read a thing that was kind of trying to debunk this, but it didn't convince me. Granted, my eyes kind of glossed over when they started getting all sciencey on me. I'm no scientist.
Well, we just heard a scientist talking about that.
Yeah. So this one claims that the way the weather system works is, and everyone learns this in grade school, water evaporates out of the ocean and lakes, and it goes up into the upper atmosphere, it floats around, and then it condenses, and it rains. And then the water comes down as rain, and it fills the lakes and the rivers run into the ocean, rinse and repeat. Literally. Good joke. Now, the salt, the rivers and lakes run through salt deposits, and they carry the salt into the ocean, and when it's evaporated, it leaves the salt behind. Kind of a form of distillation. Fresh water gets evaporated, impurities get left behind pretty often, and salt is heavy. It's sodium and chloride. So if the Earth is billions of years old and the ocean is millions and millions and millions of years old, this process, and they've done the calculations, I believe. I'm not going to say them because I don't know them. I'm not going to cite any sources, but this is, lightweight. These are the points I like the most. Over the course of millions and millions of years, the ocean should be way, 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 way saltier to the point where nothing could live there. It'd be like the Dead Sea. You know why they call it the Dead Sea? There's so much salt, nothing lives there. You know what I mean? The whole ocean should be that way, but it's not. It's, what was it, like 450 billion metric tons per year or whatever of salt goes into the ocean. Over the course of millions of years, it's just an astronomical amount of salt that should have been deposited in there, and it hasn't. They can measure it. So, that's number 2.
According to the fairy tales, because there's a little salt grinder in the bottom of the ocean churning out salt.
Oh, is that what's going on?
You know, I need to actually find out where that fairy tale comes from. There's a whole bunch that I grew up with that I don't have. Probably went to my sister.
Is the little salt grinder fairy an evolutionist?
No, it's not a fairy. It's a little salt grinder.
Oh, an actual salt grinder. An autonomous salt grinder?
Yes, it's magic and it just keeps churning out salt.
There's no fairy operating it?
No.
Oh, I'm disappointed. A mermaid, maybe?
No.
Oh, I think you're making stuff up.
I'm gonna find that story.
And you're gonna shove it right in my face, are you? Okay, moving on. Number 3, spiral galaxies. So, we believe conventional science tells you that when the Big Bang happened, we had only the base elements, helium and hydrogen and whatever, shot out of the bang, as it were. It's hard to describe something that is theoretical. And we had the base elements in the universe, and they were just, ephemeral, floaty clouds of gas that then condensed, right? And formed the stars and the galaxies and the planets and whatnot. Now, this is all good and fine, but gravity, electromagnetism, which is the same thing, if you really want to get to brass tacks, causes galaxies to spin, yes? So, if you look up at the sky and you see the spiral galaxies, according to the old universe theories, if you were to spin them for that long, then the spiral arms of the galaxies should be way tighter. There'd be way more spirals, to the point where they look like a disc. They shouldn't even be spirals anymore. But they're not. They've only spun a couple of times on a lot of them. So counting the spirals and calculating the speed at which they spin, which we can do, if you run the clock for billions of years, then they would be super, super, super spirally. But they're not. There's only like several spirals. That's one of the proofs for the universe being young. This is the universe, not just the Earth. This is the cosmos. All of creation is a lot younger, according to the spiral galaxies. So, that's number 3. Nothing to add. Totally quiet on that one.
No. I was just thinking of this documentary that I watched with my family when I was a kid that we should find, but I can't remember the name.
That's going to be hard to find.
I can ask my parents.
Number 4, the problem with potassium-argon dating. This is one I know about. There's others. You just watched a big long video on the radiocarbon dating, but the potassium-argon one is the one that I have heard more about than others. This is one they always use to date things that are millions and millions of years old. This is how they do the dinosaur thing, right? So, potassium, a certain radioactive isotope of potassium breaks down into argon gas, right? So, half-lives, you know how this works? I should explain it. So, when you have a radioactive element, it takes many, many years, and it will, it has what's called a half-life, so half of its elements will have broken down over the course of so many years. So, when you find it in nature, you can extrapolate how old it is based upon how many half-lives it has had. So if you find pure argon, then it's had so many half-lives that it has broken down completely into argon, right? And that number is huge. It's like hundreds of millions of years old, the potassium-argon thing is. Now, the problem comes from argon is a noble gas. It's really, really light. It's lighter than air. Can penetrate rock. The atoms are so fine and small and thin, or as it were, that it can actually penetrate rock layers. So you have rock and fossils, and you're measuring potassium, and you're measuring argon, and supposedly, the theory goes, you can measure both of them and extrapolate how old it is because the potassium has broken down into so much argon, right? so many parts per so many parts and get the date out of that. But if argon exists in it naturally anyway, it's penetrated the rock and there's more of it or whatever, your date's going to be all wonky. It's totally unreliable.
Be careful that you're going to tap something.
I know.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. The video I was watching when you came downstairs was talking about measurements, and he used the example, and I don't think it was a reference to this, but it was other radioactive measurements.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about the example of using an hourglass, and how you think you can measure the time based on either how much is left in the hourglass or how much is in the bottom, and you think that you've been gone, say a half hour, because there's an hour total that should be in the hourglass. But what if while you weren't looking, somebody came in and added some, and you didn't know, or there was
they flipped it,
or there was some already in the bottom when you started, and you just walked in, and you didn't know.
Yeah, or they flipped it, and since hourglasses look exactly the same on the top as the bottom, you don't know which end is up. Huh?
That's kind of a weird example, but
well, yes. Anyway, same thing. I have less than 10 points. We're moving on now.
Mm-hmm.
Point 5, I wrote flat Earth with a question mark. I'm not sure why I wrote that. We'll cover flat Earth in a different episode. Oh, we're gonna. It's gonna be the best episode ever.
We're not gonna do the Owen Benjamin.
Oh man, I love flat Earth stuff. It's so great. So point number 6 isn't really a proof or anything. I kind of deviated in my notes here. Point number 6, it says radiocarbon 16 dating only suggests a maximum of 50,000 years. So its half-life is 5,730 years. So when they do radiocarbon carbon 16 dating on dead organic material, it's only going to go to 50,000 years maximum under perfect conditions. Never longer than that. Carbon 16 is one of the ones they like to tout as like the most accurate one for organic material, but it doesn't go beyond 50,000 years. I'd be curious to see if anything has ever actually been dated 50,000 years or older, like for realsies, when they're being honest with themselves. Moving on, number 7, multi-strata fossilized trees, and this I actually wrote this down, and then I did a little more research, and I found it again in a different article. So, around the globe, you can find plants and animals and trees that are fossilized, and they are the trees specifically, but also other stuff, but we're talking about trees here. The trees will be upright, and they will excavate them, and they'll find out that the trees actually go through many strata of rock layers. So the rock layers, they claim, the rock layers form very, very slowly over eons, right? Mm-hmm. So you get like a lake or whatever, and it deposits some erosion in the spot, and then you get a storm surge, and it deposits a little more, and blah, blah, blah. It takes millions of years, big air quotes, millions of years to make these different layers of rock. And they're all compressed into sedimentary rock, and on and on and on. You'll find a fossilized tree upright through the whole thing.
I've heard of that before.
Which kind of flies in the face of the millions of years thing, because the top of that tree should be so decomposed as to not even be there. It should be gone. But no, the whole tree is fossilized, and it's completely in multiple rock layers that supposedly take millions of years to create. Impossible. It just is impossible according to the old Earth theories. This applies also to, interestingly enough, when I first looked at this particular one up, I saw this thing about jellyfish fossils, which is wild, because what are jellyfish made of? It's just gelatinous stuff floats around the ocean. How the heck do you get a fossil of a jellyfish?
I'm pretty sure it's the imprint.
Right, but even those imprints, they go multiple strata. You know what I mean? Pretty wild. But they have fossils that are in a strata, but they're actually like raised up above the next strata, which has been like scraped away to expose like the ridges of the actual fossil itself. Mm-hmm. But that upper strata is gone, but it was there. It should have taken millions of years, or thousands of years, to make another strata of rock. So even the fossils, like actual like small organism fossils, they're too tall. It disproves the theory of it being a long time. Because the upper part of that should have decomposed and disappeared. Mm-hmm. But instead, we as young Earth creationists believe it was covered immediately by lots of sediment and whatnot, and then fossilized thereafter. Moving on. Number 8, which isn't true because 2 of them aren't right. Number 6. Fossilize things on purpose. I wrote that, and I did look it up. And now I'm going to get my phone out to reference because I would like to have some actual real points here. Real names and real dates and whatnot. Give me half a moment. Here we go. So, this is about petrification of organic material, mainly wood. So there were these guys in Japan who, somehow or another, I'm not going to read it in detail, but somehow or another, they knew that a certain bit of wood, a tree, had fallen into a lake that was volcanic lake, highly acidic. It was full of like hot, highly mineralized water coming up from like a vent underneath, and they knew this tree had fallen in there like 36 years prior. Well, 36 years prior. And it was completely and utterly petrified. It was totally stone. Made of rock. Made of silica. And so, it says... here, I'll just read this. They discovered that the naturally fallen wood in the overflow had been petrified with silica. What surprised the scientists was the fact that the wood was less than 36 years old. As a result, the scientists conducted an experiment in which they fastened pieces of fresh wood in the lake with wire. Surprisingly, after only 7 years, the wood had turned into stone, petrified with silica. Under a powerful microscope, they observed that the silica was deposited in the same way in the naturally fallen wood as in some wood found in nearby volcanic ash. Hot, mineral-rich water had soaked into the pore spaces in the wood. So... basically, this was a team of scientists led by Hisatada Akahane. Hisatada Akahane?
Maybe give up.
It's very Japanese. I'm bad at that. It was in the explosion crater of the Tateyama volcano in central Japan. So, basically... petrified wood does not take thousands, millions of years to create. It takes less than a decade. And when I heard this years and years ago, my first thought, this is my nerdy self, I thought, I wonder if anyone ever took some wooden chess pieces and stuck it in that lake. Then 10 years later, they could have perfectly formed, petrified chess pieces.
And yet you won't play chess with me.
Oh my word, chess isn't that great a game. I just thought it'd be cool to have petrified chess pieces. That you petrified yourself. Anyway. Yeah, that totally flies in the face of people who claim that petrified wood takes millions of years. All of this, most of what we're talking about, except for the spiral galaxies, but most of this, the dinosaurs, the salinity of the ocean, the petrified wood, the radiocarbon, maybe not the radiocarbon one, but, the multi-strata trees, this all points to Noah's flood. A lot of it is indicative of a global calamitous tidewater flooding type of event.
Well, before we jump into that, can we take a short break so I can set this baby down and get some water?
Sure, let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Okay, we're back. I really just wanted to get a bite of dark chocolate. So.
now to my mouth and ruining my audio content.
Sorry.
Okay. Moving on.
Well, we were talking about the flood, but I guess we're going to come back to that.
No, yeah, we can talk about the flood.
Well, let's maybe finish your point since you're so close. Let me take this baby back.
Okay, take the baby back.
Hopefully she doesn't get all cheerful and talkative again.
Oh, she's gonna get angry with you. Number 7 is about Mount St. Helens. So apparently, what?
It just froze for a minute.
Are we losing audio?
I don't know. If suddenly his audio cut out and then came back in, that's what happened.
Oh my word.
It was frozen for a second there.
Okay, well, we're back on. Mount St. Helens, when it erupted, shot out a huge amount of debris. And a whole bunch of it landed in a lake. And it's called Spirit Lake. And this lake got really, really big waves going and surges. Apparently knocked trees out of the ground, something like 800 feet up the hillside. 800 feet.
Yeah, my dad told me about it when I was a kid.
Wild. So, when this happened, it was like a little micro, I say micro even though it was huge, a little micro catastrophe that emulated Noah's flood quite well in several different ways. One was that it basically created this canyon that was over 100 feet deep. The water did. In very short order. It took like less than 30 days to make this canyon through solid rock, I believe. And it looks a lot like the Grand Canyon on like a micro scale. So this is like an interesting little evidence for how the Grand Canyon could form in a short amount of time.
Isn't there a theory about the Grand Canyon actually being a place people lived at one point?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's actually some really interesting esoteric UFO-y type of stuff going on around with the Grand Canyon too. Why do you think you can't just like go rafting through the Grand Canyon?
I thought your brother went hiking there.
You can hike down it in very specific designated areas, but you can't explore it. You have to get permits, like government issued permits to explore it, and they say it's for your own safety, but you can't actually raft down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon without winning the lottery.
Well, probably cost quite a lot of manpower and money to go rescue you.
Well, yes, but wouldn't there be just like certified guides who run companies to make sure you're safe through there and have all their own safety personnel? You know what I mean?
Isn't it exceptionally dangerous?
Yes, but people would still pay it to go do it. You know what I mean? That's the adventure of a lifetime. But instead, you have to get a permit from the government. You know, it's tightly controlled, is what I'm saying. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. So we have this evidence for how the Grand Canyon conceivably was made in a very short amount of time, not millions of years. The second thing that... Sorry. If my mouth is clicking, it's because it's full of chocolate. Okay. The second thing that Mount St. Helens did for us is provide evidence for how you can have petrified forests. And that comes back to the wave on Spirit Lake, washing out all the trees. So they had a whole bunch of trees that created basically a giant wooden mat over this lake. It was like thousands of trees. And they found that a lot of these trees were ripped right out of the ground by the roots, right? So they had a giant root ball, and the root ball would sink, and the trees would float as if they were growing, like upright. They would float perfectly upright, and they would float along and hit the beach or whatever. And there's like thousands of trees, so it's very congested. They would float along and hit the beach. The root ball would land in the sand, right? And there's tons of debris in the water. There's like slurries of like sand and ash that have like liquefied, and they've been agitated to the point where they're liquid. It's just like anybody listening has done concrete and concrete work, if you add just a little too much water, the whole thing just looks like liquid. You could like move it, but it's like full of rock. You know what I mean? And it pours like liquid. That's basically what happened. It was like concrete. So these trees would embed themselves in the sediment, and then they get buried. After the slurry calmed down, it would compact, and the liquid would run out of it, and it would basically bury what looked to be whole forests in the sediment because they were all floating root down. It looked like they were growing, but they all got buried instantly, you know? And this was volcanic water, so it was highly acidic, replicating the conditions we just talked about with the quick fossilization process. It makes sense that around the world you find whole forests of petrified trees, petrified over millions of years with big air quotes. It's pretty fascinating. Like this is the evidence right here of how you can get whole forests that are buried, and then all the minerals are replaced in short order, you know, over the course of maybe hundreds of years. Water that's not quite as acidic and conducive to those conditions of instantly over 7 years making fossils, but you know, hundreds of years, maybe even thousands, but not millions. Interesting. There were two other things, but I can't remember them, and I didn't write them down.
Well, to get into the petrified forests and trees and stuff like that, something we looked into just for fun was the theory that these flat top mountains that you find might be ancient trees that were cut down. And one video we watched just smacked that theory down completely. It was a little sad.
I think he did a pretty good job of saying that it wasn't that. I mean, the guy seemed like he was trying to follow the evidence. In fact, he talked about how it was kind of sad that he had to put his idea to bed because it was such a cool idea.
Yeah. I still think there probably are, were giant trees in the past.
Yeah.
Because isn't one of the theories, or isn't there evidence that the Earth used to have higher oxygen content, carbon monoxide?
Yeah, you find these imprint fossils.
I just said carbon monoxide. Carbon dioxide.
Carbon monoxide, yeah.
Yeah.
You find these imprint fossils of humongous dragonflies, right? It's like as big as our couch. Big dragonflies. 6-foot wingspan on an insect, right?
Run into that thing.
And they've done these experiments with hyperbaric chambers where they pressurize a chamber. They enrich the oxygen and they pressurize it and they grow bugs in it, and the bugs grow to be like 8 times the size of normal, like the normal size of those particular bugs. So they believe that the Earth, A, had higher pressure in the air, and B, had more oxygen rich. Because they can replicate that and create the giant bugs. It's pretty fascinating.
Wasn't that one of the theories about why there aren't dinosaurs anymore, is that they needed more oxygen?
Yeah, and that makes sense because they're so big. You know, it's funny. It's funny how physics, like the physical universe, is such that odd things are capable in certain physical conditions. You have something to add?
I was gonna get into dinosaurs a little bit and then get back to the flood. Several of the people that we've been listening to, and in fact a book that we bought for our kids. Okay, we bought it for me, but it will be for the kids.
Yes.
Theorizes that there were in fact dinosaurs, small dinosaurs, on the Ark.
Oh yeah.
And the book in particular is based entirely around dragons and the theory that dinosaurs are the origin of all dragon lore. And in fact, it's a cool book because it takes historical evidences and anecdotes from not too ancient history, like the Middle Ages and stuff.
Sure. I don't think there's any reason to doubt that there were giant flying lizards back in the day. AKA dinosaurs. Flying dinosaurs. The flying kind.
Well, there's no reason to think that water dinosaurs also didn't survive the flood.
That's true. Oh, I think they definitely described the flood. In fact, one of the evidences espoused by someone for dinosaurs not being millions and millions of years old is eyewitness account. We actually have eyewitness accounts of dinosaurs today, right now. And we have newspaper articles. Isn't there that real famous newspaper article? Comes out of Nevada or New Mexico or something.
Can you even find it anymore?
Well, you can find the picture. It's got a photograph. These guys standing like underneath a 12-foot wingspan pterodactyl or whatever they killed.
That's in the book, yeah.
Yeah, like that's a legit photo. That's a real thing.
Well, and here in town, there's this, it's mostly a joke, but I don't know the origin of it. It's been going around on the community page for a while, people talking about the Thunderbird.
Oh yeah, we've got a Thunderbird in town.
And anytime somebody says, hey, did you guys see this, big-ass bird the other day? Like, is it a Thunderbird?
It's totally a Thunderbird.
So it's kind of a big joke, but some people have actually set up maybe not a whole page dedicated to it, but a discussion to, have you seen this?
Yeah, somebody claimed, probably on the community page, or maybe it was that page you were talking about, somebody claimed that they looked up while driving, and they saw the thing, and they claimed the wingspan went across the road, like it went from one side of the road all the way to the other. And that was on like a 4-lane spot of road. So, how wide is the road? Like 7 feet, 8 feet wide. 8 times 4, 24 feet wide. Or 32 feet wide.
Well, there's some good drugs going around town, so you never know.
That's pretty wild if there's a 32-foot wingspan thing flying around. So, anyway, the very last point I had, I just wrote it down because the video you were watching, they were talking about cavemen and prehistoric man before he had tools or whatever, right? And but their theories are all wrong, based solely upon the fact that the accepted amount of time that caveman when Neanderthal man evolved, right, from being an ape or whatever, right, from the time he did that until he became Homo sapien and started using tools and refining metals was something like 185,000 years, right? And they said that at the beginning of that, humankind had something like 1 million people. And so if you do the math and you work out 1 million people over the generations for 185,000 years, you would have like 8 billion skeletons. 8 billion people would have died over that course of time. And we have like a handful of skeletons. We should have 8 billion people worth the evidence of all those people, but we don't. It doesn't exist.
Well, and it wasn't until our parents' generation that people were encouraged to have just 2 kids. Because the planet.
Yes, save the planet. Don't have children. People are dumb. So anyway, that's all I had written down.
Well, as far as something that's always bothered me about this idea of man crawled out of the ooze, millions of years ago, and then suddenly, in the last 200 years, we've just leaped forward, technology-wise. That's absolutely ridiculous. To think that just so quickly we've gone from scratching around the dirt to going to space.
Yeah.
Whatever your thoughts on that side, we are launching things into the atmosphere and outside.
No, we can't get past the Van Allen belt, so.
Hagman had something to say about that, but I won't get into that. But it's just a ridiculous idea. And when you go to, pure Darwinian evolution, it's idiocy, because as I mentioned to you the other day, if we take the evolutionary idea that you came from the waters and you evolved this thing that helped you do this, and then you evolved this thing. Well, nobody would have made it past the first evolution because they would have died because of evolutionary mistakes. Nobody would have lived long enough to breed.
Right. Well, that's part of the reason.
Also, the male and female wouldn't have been
compatible
to breed.
That's part of the reason Darwinian evolution doesn't work, is because when we do see beneficial mutation, it's extremely uncommon to see any form of actual beneficial mutation. Something like 99% of mutations are detrimental. And then there's no more. There's only one that has a beneficial mutation, like an extra forefinger or something that is actually articulate and works.
Yeah.
It's super uncommon on its face, and then it doesn't reproduce. So, therefore, making Darwinian evolution kind of moot and untrue, because we've never seen any animal change from one kind to another. There's never been an animal that had a mutation, say they had a working extra limb, that then suddenly sprung off another species of animals that had an extra limb. There was just the one, and it died.
Well, that's the dumb thing, is that people try and obfuscate microevolution with macroevolution.
Right. Unfortunately, that's something that us, as Christians who don't believe in macroevolution, we have to make sure, if you talk to anybody who is a Darwinian evolutionist, or anyone who's even interested on your views of evolution, you have to make it very clear that you do believe in microevolution, because the finches do change their beaks according to the season. Their beaks get longer or shorter according to the fruit. That happens all the time. It's observable. But you never see a finch turn into a hen. A chicken.
Well,
you never see a cat turn into a dog. There's no such thing as changing from a finch even to a bird that's similar but different. That they're still finches in the end. They never change. The fruit flies, that you can breed tons and tons and tons of generations in a matter of years. You can get hundreds of generations of fruit flies. They're still fruit flies, So that's, macroevolution doesn't work at all. It just doesn't happen. It's never been observed ever in a lab.
Well, chickens are proof positive of, I think...
That God loves us and wants us to be happy.
Well, I was going to say that humans are not meant to be herbivores. Chickens are absolutely useless except for being a food source.
Yeah. There's another animal I was thinking not too long ago that is basically just there to be consumed. I can't remember which animal I was thinking that of, though. Chickens is definitely the primary one that comes to mind.
Chickens are stupid.
Yeah, they're dumb.
Kind of gross. And before anyone says, well, you're just being mean, no, I raised chickens. Okay?
Being gross has nothing to do with anything, though.
Yeah.
That's just
but
your
it
personal
does turn your stomach
opinion.
a little bit when you buy eggs at the store and there's still a feather sticking to them. It makes you question the sanitary practices of the farm it came from.
I would think that it makes you happy that they didn't spray it with some sort of solution.
Soap and water. That's all I ask for. Soap and water. But no,
what kind of soap? Trick the sand?
No, chickens are not wonderful animals. You'll come across one that I'm sure some lonely vegan woman will try and, put a personality upon and think that it's her child. There's videos of those. Mm-hmm. But chickens are meant to be eaten.
They're so tasty.
Or their eggs are. That's all there is to it.
Those are tasty
and
too.
before the idiocy of you're eating their offspring, no, you're not. It's not fertilized. You do not eat fertilized eggs. Unfortunately, my sister once cracked open an egg that had grown partway before it died.
That's a delicacy in the Philippines.
Oh, gosh.
It is.
You know what? Asians eat some weird things. Anyway, was it Answers in Genesis or Ken Ham's channel we were looking at the other day, who was talking about microevolution and how that is how, because people are like say, oh, the ark wasn't big enough. If you look at the Bible, and the measurements given, it's not big enough. Well, it is if you think of the fact that microevolution is a thing.
Yeah, the diversity of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was there a number? I've heard it before, but I'm not going to guess. But isn't there a number put out there on basic types of animals? You can like reduce the complexity of life scientifically down to what through the knowledge of microevolution, knowing how that works and how quickly it can work. You can actually reduce the kinds of animals down to a certain number, and it's viable for the ark. It's like 270 kinds or something.
I think they talked about it, but I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't remember the number, so don't, whoever's listening can do their research, but you reduce it down to a certain number of kinds. So on Noah's Ark they had a female dog and a male dog, and that's it. Or maybe they didn't even have that. They had a wolf. A female wolf and a male wolf. Well, guess what? Now it's been 4,500 or 5,000 years later, and we have how many breeds of dogs?
Labradoodles.
Yeah, now we have Labradoodles, because of the diversity of life that comes out of just two kinds. It's totally feasible. We have Labradoodles now. Those didn't exist just a few years ago. So they're making new kinds still of dogs. You only need the two wolves, and it applies to everything else. Quite easily, it could have all been on Noah's Ark.
Well, a cat is a cat, no matter the size.
Yeah, they probably had, and I can even see like a tiger coming out of a lion. Over 4,500 years with microevolution, you get a different sort of big cat out of a big cat,
Conceivably, little cats all came from big cats originally.
Yeah, I've actually read about that. I think they believe that the common domesticated house cat comes from some sort of like desert cat from Africa. This little tiny desert cat.
I thought it was from Egypt.
Egypt's in Africa.
My brain always just separates the two. I think Egypt...
I know Egypt gets special place amongst history. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Anyway. Was there something else?
No, I think that's a pretty good episode.
See how long we've been going. We're going to take out like 10 minutes.
It's over an hour.
Break. Any news subjects we want to touch on? Looking at our YouTube channel, recent watching, there's that video of the old white woman who thought she wouldn't get arrested by the police for fleeing.
That video is hilarious.
It is. I mean, it's not, but it's also funny because it's proof that, white people don't get special treatment from police, do they?
Also, why didn't that lady she didn't... So dumb.
Like, I didn't think I was gonna get arrested.
Well, if you believe that you're getting a ticket in error, just sign the paper and then go talk to the judge on your date. It's not that hard. Everyone knows the procedure. She's like, how old was she? 50 or 60?
Oh, way
She knows
older
the procedure. She knows she can sign the thing and just go talk to the judge. And if he agrees with you, he throws it out. And if he doesn't, you have to pay your fine or whatever, or go to jail.
There's lots of videos of people saying they don't want to sign it because they think it's an admission of guilt.
It's not. The cop tells you straight up. I've gotten tickets before. He says, this is not an admission of guilt. This is you saying you will either A, pay the fine, or B, go down to the people and talk to them about it.
Yeah.
That's what you're signing it for.
Well, I got a speeding ticket once, and I didn't fight it because I was speeding. But nobody else was on the road.
I got a parking ticket once that I got thrown out.
I should have fought that parking ticket.
Yeah, you probably could have gotten it thrown out.
The one parking ticket I got was at our first apartment before we got married. I had to park across the road in the spot that had a sign that said no parking between April 1st and November 1st.
Yep.
I parked there one day.
You got it reversed. November 1st to April 1st. Over the winter because of snow plowing.
Yeah. I parked one day outside of April, no snow on the ground.
Yeah,
None.
it was like March 31st, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was so dumb.
That's pretty annoying.
And you know what? I got a second parking ticket just last year at my sister's place. Again,
Oh, yeah.
no snow on the ground. Other cars had been parked there for months, not moving. But I got a ticket.
Yep. How dare you block the snowplow that's not going to come by because it hasn't snowed in 6 weeks.
Yep.
Pretty dumb.
Anyway, so that was a funny thing in our recent newsreel. I've been listening to the Hegman Report quite a bit. Just off and on. We haven't done that for years.
Yeah, I listened to them years ago, but I kind of fell off of listening to them. I haven't really made a lot of time for podcasts, and when I do, it's just a couple of video game podcasts, and that's it, because I feel like I only ever have a couple of hours a week for podcasts, so there's 2 video game podcasts, and they get my couple of hours, and that's it. I don't really do a news thing lately.
Yeah, well, we've been trying to be more choosy about what we listen to recently since we suddenly realized our oldest is at an age where he repeats everything. He remembers everything and he repeats everything. So, trying to be more choosy about that. I listen to Rush Limbaugh most every day if I can. And start listening to Red Ice on the weekends.
How could you?
I know, how could I?
How could you? You're so woke. Anyway, let's wrap this up. I think that's it. Find us on YouTube. Find us here and there and everywhere. We're on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review or something. I never
We're on
look
Twitter.
Yeah, we're on Twitter at Hinterlandsfeed. You can email us at thehinterlandsmedia@gmail.com. Go to the website, www.hinterlandsmedia.com, which just brings you to the podcast.
Yeah, eventually it'll bring you to a website, but...
Yeah, we'll work on it down the road, then we'll do something. But right now, just go listen to the old episodes, because they're good too, if you're a new listener.
Buy my children's books.
Buy Eleanor's children's books, if you can find them. You want to say the name of one of them, so they can look on Amazon?
Yes, the current series is The Adventures of Tonsta, written by Eleanor Currit. That's Currit with a C. People seem to think it's with a K. There will be a 3rd book soon. I try to do one every Christmas now, so keep an eye out for that, hopefully.
There you go. Look those up. I think that's it. I don't produce anything but this podcast, so don't look me up, except for on Twitter.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.